Since we have a bit of a weather issue right now, I figured I'd make a video on this subject. Well, one of the things I'll probably never do in my lifetime, and I've never have in the past, is buy a new car. And I'm going to explain to you how that I've dealt with this my whole life, and it saved me tons and tons of money. Especially now, you look at new cars, they're like $50,000 on the average cost of a car, and the payments on that are like $1,000, $1,500, $1,200 a month, depending on the interest rate you get. And really, you can do a lot better than that without buying a new car, other than, get the new car because nobody's farted in it. That's the old saying guys used to say. Honestly, that fart smell is going to cost you 20% of the value of the car the minute you walk out of the door. So here's how I've dealt with this. For me, I've been able to fix my own cars because I learned mechanics in high school. For some of you, the reason that I started my YouTube channel is to be able to help other people learn how to fix their own cars. And there is YouTube. So now you guys that are younger have that access to YouTube for maintenance videos, for videos on how to change your timing belt, your oil. Pretty much there's everything you can imagine on YouTube to learn how to do your own mechanics. So in lieu of buying a brand new car, you can buy an old car that's serviceable and maintain and use that car over your lifetime. And actually, there's some places where you have to buy a newer car because of rust and things like that. And maybe some people that are older, like me, myself, I figure maybe in my 70s, I might have to buy something fairly new or that I don't have to service. And I haven't considered that yet, but up until this point, I'll always have a used old car, and I just maintain it, make it look nice, and I don't drive junk. All my cars, even my newer cars, or my older cars, obviously the one in the background is a Volkswagen, and those obviously are restored. But my newer cars are also in very good condition. As the paint gets bad, I repaint them, and again, I teach that stuff on my YouTube channel because of that reason. Here's a truck that I just rescued and of course repainted, and I'm going to sell this. And something like this for someone is way better than buying a new truck. Like this thing has 81,000 miles. It's totally serviceable. When you look under the hood of a new car, it does not look like this. And so if you look at your used cars and you figure out one that you could learn how to work on, like I can see the spark plug wires and the spark plugs where they are. I can see how easy it is to access the alternator. And this one in particular has a new hoses, new alternator. It has plenty of service area. In fact, it has a new radiator, new water pump done on a maintenance basis. I can see there's no coolant stains all over it, so I know it's not been overheated. I know it runs really good. Those are things that you kind of need to know when you're doing your work. I think it's a small block Chevy, so there's parts always going to be available for something like this. The same small blocks go back to the 50s on up to the 90s before they did LS. And even the LS parts are so interchangeable. So things like General Motors, in your old school setup like this, rear wheel drive, are really good for lifetime cars to own. You could own something like this and maintain it and keep it forever. And all the parts should be available for it. In some states, you don't even need to get a smog check. So California, you got to get a smog check. So that's an issue here. But, all the parts are available. It has a pre-OBD2 catalytic converter, so they're very cheap to buy. All that stuff's really inexpensive, even the smog stuff. The injectors, this is a throttle body injection system, very easy to maintain, very easy to learn how to work on. There's so many things about this vehicle that are perfect for a forever car. So when I buy a used car, I have different needs than what this is. So I have a Duramax diesel 3/4 ton pickup because I need to get a little better gas mileage than the old Chevy when I'm pulling stuff, because I pull a lot of heavy things all the time. So a guy like me needs this, and you have to figure out, first of all, look inside yourself and figure out what you really need and figure out how to buy that car. This is pre-smog, okay, 2003 federal model. It has no smog equipment on it from the factory, and so when it gets a smog check, it passes no problem because it doesn't need anything. And it's a really good year to have. Now there's issues with this year, so you look up all your issues and things like that, you get to know what the vehicle has problems with. This one has problems with injectors, okay, and so yeah, you have to maintain and replace the injectors on it, and they're not cheap. But compared to $1,000 a month payment, owning one of these is actually really cheap. So the other car that I was buying for a while, and I don't know, my needs are maybe changing now. I don't know what the future holds, but at the time I was having to drive thousands of miles, and thousands of miles at a time. So I have these Jetta's TDIs. I have 3 different TDI models. I have the Jetta, the Sport Wagon, and I also have an Audi A3. It is my wife's daily driver, so we use that car the most. Okay, this one here is down for service, and one of the things about these that's a pain is the serviceability of the car. So I had to sacrifice because I needed long gas mileage. I mean, this thing gets amazing gas mileage. It's like 46 miles a gallon on the highway. Had to sacrifice serviceability for longevity, so this was kind of the happy medium for me. And there's nothing wrong with having one of these as a daily driver when the weather's good. I don't drive this in the rain. I wouldn't drive it in the snow, certainly not. But one of these in the winter is fantastic. In the summer in California, it isn't the greatest if you're inland. If you're near the coast, it's great for a daily driver, as long as you're not driving on the freeways and things like that all the time. That's not going to be good for one of these old cars. And it's probably not going to be good for your health as well. The freeways out here can be just, people just drive like crazy. Yeah, you're just taking your life in your own hands a lot of times in Southern California freeways. In some cities and some places in the US, you can use one of those as a daily driver in the summer, and it's a nice little second car to have. But if you have one of those, you should always have your beater. You know, if you're in the Midwest and the East, you're going to have a beater car. You're going to have something in the snow that you just drive and you just don't care. You just drive it and just let it get wrecked. So rather than buy new cars, I've always bought used. Let's talk about this. So if you're going to try and do the same thing, I would highly suggest it. With these new cars, they're making them worse and worse and worse. What they're doing now is they're making cars to meet regulations more importantly than they are to last. Because regulation keeps on getting more and more and more. Safety regulations, fuel mileage regulations, all these other regulations that come into play. Everybody wants to put their hand in it. And so cars have become more and more complicated. You know, and in some ways that can be nice because, you know, almost every car has comfort. But along with that, you run into some things that aren't so great. You know, they have safety stuff with, you know, all the airbags and all that, which is nice. But the complications of all of those things have made them much harder to service and maintain. Then you have other parts that they make obsolete. Like a friend of mine has a hybrid type Toyota Highlander, and it's low miles. It has 70,000 miles, and there's a brake system, the failure that it has on that car, and the dealer doesn't even carry the part anymore. And so there's that sort of thing going on. And it's, you know, it's an older car. It's over 10 years old, but you can't get those parts anymore. So you have to select a car that has serviceability that you can get parts for. And that's the type of thing that I've always looked for. So I'll look for certain makes and models that have parts. General Motors, usually your 90s General Motors stuff, usually they had parts. Now, I stay away from, if you didn't notice, there's a Ecotech out there, and those just are not good. They have issues with the rings prematurely wearing out. So these are all things that you need to research when you're going to try and buy a car and drive it as a daily driver, or use it as a what they call forever car, versus buying a new car and, you know, trying to maintain that new car. You're gonna have a payment that's much higher. You know, this is the way I look at it, is, let's say I buy a car for about $5,000. All right, a used car for about $5,000. And now it's more like between $5,000 and $10,000. So to find what you want, you're gonna probably pay between $5,000 and $10,000 and you pay cash, okay? And so that's, if it's say $7,000, $7,000 out of pocket. So usually what I'll do is I'll buy a car that I know has a problem, because usually people are selling the car because it has a problem, and I'll know that it's a problem that I can fix. So I'll look for a car, you know, let's say it's got body damage. That's easy. I already know I can fix that because I know that the car was maintained, and if I look at it and see that it looks like it was maintained and it has body damage, I could say, hey, well, if I fix this body damage on this car, then this is a good car. So that's one thing I'll look at. Or if I know that it has a code on the engine where I can check it out and I go, okay, I know this code. I've looked it up on YouTube. I can figure out how to repair that code, and I can get the car really cheap because of that. So those are your types of good deals that you can get, and that's how I do it, because I know that I can fix it. And the other person just goes and buys a new car. So they're going to be losing, because as soon as they go buy that new car, they're going to lose 20% of the value, and then you can be the person who benefits from their loss. So if, let's say, it's a $6,000 car after the repairs, like I bought my Audi like that. I bought it, I knew that it had a problem. It had a problem, and it was a very expensive problem, so I got the car very cheap. And it ended up having other problems as well, and I kind of planned on all that. And I fixed all the problems, got it all bulletproofed out to where I know it's got everything right, and then I'll just use it and drive it and get lots and lots of miles out of it, because I'll plan on getting 300, 400,000 miles out of that, because it's a diesel. It should last that long. Diesels, Toyotas last a very long time if you get the right Toyota. Of course, the Highlander, obviously, with the hybrid, no, you can't get parts for that. So, and you can, they're from China, and it's a hit and miss thing. You know, like you got a part, put it on, it's no good, he's got to send it back, you know, and that sort of thing. So you try and find stuff that has universal parts that will make it last longer. Like that pickup truck, that thing's perfect. There will be parts available for that forever. So the downside to that is it doesn't get very good gas mileage. So depending on where you live, if you live in California, it might not be the vehicle to own. So, you know, that's one of the reasons that these old Volkswagens are cool to have as a classic, because you can own it as a classic, drive it around, and use it from time to time. It gets pretty good gas mileage, and, you know, as long as you're doing it at safe time periods, you know, as long as you're not driving it in this weather, you know, people out here just drive like crazy in the rain. And the roads here are just as slick as they are in the ice some places, believe me. They're super slick here because it just doesn't rain that often. So you drive an old Volkswagen like that in the rain, it's just not a good time to drive it. That's when you need another car as well if you're going to do that. So from a financial standpoint, All that car that you bought for $6,000 needs to do is get through 6 months, and you've made your money back. You haven't lost. The car still has value, so you could even sell it for something and get some of your money back if you couldn't repair what was wrong with it. And if you buy a new car, like I said, you're paying that $1,000 a month, and you've lost 20% of that value as soon as it left the dealership, and you can't even sell it again and get your money back. You're upside down. So you have to own that car, that new car, for 3, 4, 5 years before you can actually have some of the money that you've been spending in payments back. So if you figure in a year, that's $12,000 at $1,000 a month you've spent in payments. Shoot, you could have bought 2 beaters or older cars. You could find something with good paint and everything else. And that's another thing that I'll look for when I'm looking for a used car. I'll find one that needs a paint job. It's in great shape. It's been sitting outside, like that truck. That thing was horrible looking, okay? It looked terrible. And so I got it, and I thought, well, if I paint it, it's a lot more valuable to someone because now it looks good and it runs good. So those are the type of things I would do when I'm buying a car. Is I'll look for one that it has bad paint and I can repaint it, and I'll have a nice looking car. I did that back in the 80s when I bought my Lincoln Town Car. I needed a big, heavy, comfortable car, and gas wasn't expensive at that time. So I bought a Lincoln Town Car that needed a paint job. So I painted it, made it look brand new, and drove that around. That was the thing that I had back then. And I had 0 maintenance problems because all that stuff was done. So those are the types of things that you look for when you're trying to buy that car. And that's how I've done it for years. And along with that, I've always had a classic car that I could enjoy and drive during the off seasons when the weather is good for the classic to drive it. And because most of the old air-cooled cars don't have air conditioning in the summer, you're not going to really want to drive it that much in the inland. If you're near the coast, you can drive it all year round. It's fine. Especially if you're driving short distances, and you get pretty good gas mileage. So Volkswagens are great for that. Some of you guys that need the air conditioning, you find a bigger car. Maybe you live in a place where it's where that's where there's no problem with gas prices. So like if you're in like Tennessee, or if you're in Florida maybe, or if you're in, Florida's going to be hot. I'm trying to think somewhere, you need air conditioning in Florida. No matter where you are, you need air conditioning in Florida. So in the summer, in the winter, no, it's beautiful there in the winter too. It's like the deserts here are really nice in the winter, and you can drive a classic as a daily out here, in the Arizona and all that. Is you almost want heat, so you want some kind of heat in your car. But you can drive all winter long in your classic, and then in the summer you just drive your air-conditioned car, and you can get one of those 90s or early 2000s. When some guys say that the 2000s cars are more complicated than the 90s, it's kind of a perception thing. Some of the 2000s cars are actually pretty easy to work on, because they do have the OBD2 system, so it's easier to figure out where the problems are. But when it comes to the 2010s on up, a lot of the cars went to a CVT transmission. So let's just talk about some of the things I try and stay away from when I'm buying a used car that I'm going to use as my daily, real quick. One of the things I stay away from is CVT. The reason I stay away from a CVT is not because they don't work good. When they're working, they do work really good. They work fine. If you baby the car, if you drive it easy, a CVT can last a long time. But the problem is you don't know how that other person that owned it drove it. If they drove it like they stole it all the time, that CVT could be on borrowed time. And the CVT may become obsolete to buy another new transmission, because you take a CVT to a transmission shop to get it rebuilt, and you're not going to have a successful rebuild. You're going to have something that doesn't last. The only way you can get a CVT to work is just to go to the dealer and buy a brand new one. So I stay away from CVT. That's one thing. CVT transmissions, no go. Not unless I got the car for super cheap, and let's say I got it for like $1,000 and it ran good and looked okay, and I was just going to drive it for 6 months or a year. It was a winter drive car, then maybe I would do it. But that's a throwaway car, okay? But for something that you're going to use for a long period of time, I'd stay away from it. The other thing I look for, sometimes a timing belt can be an issue. Sometimes the chain can be an issue. So you got to kind of look at the car and the service and like the forums and things like that, and find out if it's better to get a timing belt that you need to maintain versus a chain that you expect that's going to last forever, but they don't. Like for instance, the Ford, I think, what is it? A small 4-liter Ford V8 has a timing chain, and they don't last. And when they go, it's interference, and the engine goes with it. So you have to end up replacing that at some point. Some of the other cars like that, Ecotech, the chains go out on those, and they don't last the whole 200,000 miles. Some cars, if the oil is changed regularly, so they have like the ones I used to have was a Toyota Matrix, which is the same engine that's in the Corolla. Those can last 300,000+ miles. I've seen people with 400,000 miles on a chain because they kept it full of oil and maintained the oil on it. So those are the types of things I'll weigh out. I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm saying that you kind of need to know what you're getting into before you buy the car. So it pays to do that research. Like, you can't really do that on a new car. If you go to buy a new car, you don't really know what is going to go wrong with that car until it's been on the service market for 5 or 6 years. So you might get a lemon when you go buy a new one, but when you buy an old one, you can look all over the internet now, and you can find out what the issues are and figure out which one you think will be the best for you. And of course, you can also put price in there. So if like, let's say you say, oh, okay, I'll X-nay, there's no way I'll ever buy a Hyundai, okay, a Hyundai car. But let's say you bought one and it was $1,000, it was well maintained, and $1,500, you figure I can get 6 months or a year out of it, then maybe it's not a bad deal. And then at the end, you can just throw it away and sell it for whatever, scrap, when it stops working and you've just done nothing but change oil, So there's that way to look at it as well. So you have to kind of weigh out every make and model and figure out what is working for you. So like I said, for me, because I was putting 600, 800,000 miles, 2,000 miles at a time on my car, the TDI was the best bet. Because literally I was driving from Southern California all the way to Northern California to work sometimes, and then driving back sometimes in the same day, and I do that a couple of times a month. Well, I might not be doing that now. I haven't done that in several years, so maybe it's time for me to reassess and figure out, what should I get? Should I just let those cars go, and because there are a lot of maintenance, a lot of expense to do that? But then again, I also look at, okay, I'm paying less gas tax because it's cheaper on fuel, and I've set them up to where they run on biofuels versus, when your AA's or your CJAA engine is not really set up for biofuels, but if you change the fuel pump to the CP3 pump, then yeah, it can run on biofuels. And so you can save money there because they charge less gas tax on biofuels in California. So there's all these things that I'm assessing and looking at myself, and I'm just saying that you can figure out how to benefit, because like somebody can buy that truck right now, all right, who they're looking at newer trucks. A new truck's $50,000, all right, and you open up the hood on the new truck and you're not going to be able to fix anything, and it's got tons of crazy amounts of safety crap all over it. That truck doesn't even have airbags, okay, so it's really, 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 really simple, okay. And does it really need the airbags? Because it's a pretty heavy vehicle. Who's going to lose in an accident? And if you don't drive it like you're a crazy young person, then something like that somebody could benefit from. One more thing I wanted to touch in this video is the thing that I notice now is cars are being made for service, or not being made for serviceability. They're being made for regulation. Insurance companies are being pushed to make cars, to pushing mandates to Congress and stuff like that, so that cars are required to have more and more safety equipment. And here's the reason why. It's you got these young guys who get in a car today and they think the car will do anything. They think because the car, like when I was younger, if I got in an old car like my old VW and I went 100 miles an hour down the freeway, it was scary. You had to hang on to the steering wheel. You know, it was now you get a newer car from the 90s on up and they feel like you're going 60 when you're going 100. You could be going 120. It feels like they're going 60 in a newer car. You know, anything from the 90s on up, because of the engineering and the changes in the suspension and all that stuff. They've dialed it in to where it really, really handles good until it doesn't. So you got these young people that have made regulation complicated. They've gone out and they've, you know, you see all the candles on the side of the road. You see little crosses everywhere. And you know that a lot of that, I'm not saying all of it, some of it's victims from them, okay? They go out and they drive like a maniac because their car will do it, okay? And then they find out when they reach the limit and it doesn't do it, that it's death is the other side of that. So you've got insurance companies that had to pay out claims because somebody died, okay? And we're all paying for that, by the way. And then they go to the car companies like, hey, you need to make a safer car. And Congress goes, oh, we need to make safer cars. It's really, you need to stop people from being idiots. So, you know, this is people, and this is the problems that have created this direction that we're going in the car world, where the new cars are just so over-regulated and have so much. You know, I just figure this, you know, just leave them the way they are. Don't put all that extra safety crap on them. You know, the thing is you're protecting the people, I guess, in one respect. You're protecting the people that were the victim of that person who drove crazy, okay? And the person who drove crazy, I almost just wish that you could just say, hey, don't give them the safety regulations. Let them demise happen. And let them figure it out for their own selves, you know, and eliminate some of the stuff. And then when all of a sudden, you know, people start seeing a lot of death, then they go, oh, well, maybe we should learn from this and not drive like crazy people. Instead of making it an insurance problem and making it a car problem, make it the responsibility of the person who's doing the driving to be safer. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. And that's my opinion in this video. I'll talk to you on the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.